Okay, all right. Well, good morning, everybody. It is exactly 9 a.m. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure some people will get on the phone, but my commitment is to really respect your time and honor our 30 minutes here. And we've got so much to cover. So if you don't have a piece of paper and a pencil, I highly recommend that you go ahead and grab one of those. And so welcome to our third goals and strategy series here in the month of December. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, or even if you've joined us from the beginning, I just want to really get you present that, this call series, although we've been building on every single call, building on the previous call, I want to challenge you to listen today from a distinction called listen to it newly. I think so many times, especially for a lot of us who have been doing these calls for the last 2 years, we listen to this call like, oh, yeah, she said that. Oh, yeah, I already know that, right? And while that is great to have, knowledge and things like that, a lot of the times what happens is when we come into anything, whether it's a call or a meeting or even a relationship with someone, talking to them, if we address it like, oh, yeah, I already know, there's no room to create anything new. And so I want to challenge each and every one of us, and I'm going to take the challenge myself, to really look at today's call and listen from, wow, this is the first time you've ever heard it. And the reason being is because I'm going to take a few minutes to recreate the last 2 weeks' call. And the purpose that I'm going to do that is to get you present to, have you done your homework or not? Now, I will confess that I did the call last night for the Spanish group, and I really got present to some of the things that I had not done, some of the things that I had been missing. And, you guys are, I'm not afraid to let you guys know my goods and my bads, because at the end of the day, we are all human. And, what's so fantastic about doing these calls with you guys is that not only do I get to create and contribute to you, but by me sharing this, I got to create and contribute to myself yesterday. So this morning, I really got present to the fact that how many times do we do things or do we listen to something like, oh, yeah, I know this. So why I'm sharing that with you is because this call series is all about strategies and setting your goals for 2015. And here's the thing. Everybody knows that, come December 31st, January 1st, a lot of people are going to start establishing goals. What I want to challenge all of us to do is to this year, come from a different perspective. Rather than it being like, oh, yeah, and having the same goals, like a list that we've done in the previous years, to really start to create something. In the first call series, where we started to really, start talking about is when we are looking at goals, there's 3 pillars that must be in place. And anytime you've accomplished anything in your life, especially if you have accomplished it with velocity. Okay, now maybe there's things that have come to your life like by default or luck or I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But anytime you have by design accomplished any of your goals, these 3 pillars have been in place. Number 1, you have had you've had a vision, okay? So what we talked about 2 weeks ago was let's not write our list this year. And I don't know if any of you guys have done this to create a vision for what you want for 2015. And I challenged all of us to not do it from a perspective of, I want to lose 20 pounds. Because, see, that's not very motivating. Although you think, oh, yeah, well, I lose 20 pounds, I'm going to be happy. Well, what I want to invite you to do is to look at, okay, if I lose 20 pounds or if I get fit and ripped, okay, what will that give me? How will that make me feel? What would that allow me to do? So to really create your vision and your goals for 2015 in a descriptive way where they have aliveness and they're vivid, and you can actually have an experience with your goals that will pull you towards them and not something that you have to do or that it's another list that you get to check off 2015. So the first week we talked about really creating your goals from a vision. And I want to challenge you to stop and ponder, have you done that? Have you done that? I have, but I will confess that I could do a better job. I have, but I could confess that I could go back and really design a vision for more areas of my life that I'm committed to, and to really create them from a place of experiencing it down to my nervous system level. So that's number 1, was creating a vision. Number 2, And in addition to that is to have a laser vision, like to really laser in on what it is you want to accomplish for 2015 in a vivid experience kind of way. Number two, once you have a vision, we got to have strategy. And underneath strategy, we talked about that, we got to start thinking about, okay, to create this vision, what kind of tools will I need? What kind of strategy, plan, what kind of plan will I need to put in place? And what kind of systems will I need to, create, or will I need to be a part of? And number four, my mentoring. Who am I going to support? Who's going to be my support team? And you can have one mentor. A lot of you guys have heard me talk about my mentor, Olga, that I've had for the last 2 years, right? And she's been like my coach at the corner, right? I'm out there like, fighting the fight, right? And then I go to the corner and she's like, all right, well, good job. Now let's do this, let's do that, right? So who do you have at your corner? And it could be a mastermind group or it could be a particular person. So you need to figure out what ways, what strategies you're going to put into place to support that vision, because especially a lot of us here on the phone, we're entrepreneurs, and I get it. So many times as entrepreneurs, we live this lonely life. What I mean by that is it's like we are it, right? When you have a regular job, you have like a manager and you have your boss and you have the owner of the company. When you clock out, you go home and that's it. When you're a business owner, you are your business. So a lot of the times, it's like, who do we turn to when we have questions? I mean, you really can't bring them down to your organization or to your team, your employees, because they're like looking up at you for guidance, right? Now, of course, you could probably, brainstorm with them, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that we need to discuss, that we can discuss with our team. So it's so important to have a mentor, to have some kind of support system, okay? So that's number two, is your strategy. So my question to you is, if you've done the vision, if you've done your goals for 2015, have you put in place your strategies? And if you have, could you make them better? Not from a make wrong, not like, oh my God, you didn't do a good job, but could you think of other ways that could support you in accomplishing your vision? The number three was to have massive action. And we talked about the fact that it is so important to have a massive action plan, okay? And, and here's the thing. A lot of us already know this, right? The only way to get results is by taking action. But I want you to start to relate to it like, you mean to tell me that if I take massive action with a strategic plan, my vision will come to fruition? And I'm here to tell you absolutely, okay? And I'm going to give you some 10 tips to make sure that happens. So that was week one. So my question to you is, how are you doing with that homework? Did you do it? Could you go back and revisit it, okay? And for those of you who perhaps were not on the first call and you would like to go, you can either go on to latinleadership.com or you can go on to Entrepreneur Intelligence. If you go to Latin Leadership, it'll direct you to the Entrepreneur Intelligence website. And on the Entrepreneur Intelligence website are all the calls, okay? So on the homepage, I put up there the latest calls so you don't have to look for them. So if you haven't done that, I really invite you to go back and really listen to the last two calls. Also, I'm sending them out in the email. So if you haven't looked at that, definitely check your email box. It's coming from me. And I've got the last two calls on there so you can revisit them and really do your homework, okay? Because I know sometimes we might listen to this while we're driving and we can't write it down. But go back and listen to them and really invest the time to really create. What do you want 2015? I can't believe it's already December. One of my girlfriends and I were talking. I'm like, gosh, this year went by so fast. But you know what? I think we say that every year. A lot has changed this year for a lot of us, and some things are great and some things could have been better. But here's the thing. It's all an experience, right? So the question is, what experience do you want to have for 2015? So take the time, invest the time, okay? And on that call, I gave you some tips on how my coach had me do it last year. All right, so that was week number one. So the question is, how are you doing with that homework, okay? Week number two, last week, we started to build on that foundation, and we started to get more clear on, okay, now that you've got the vision, you've got the strategy, and you've got the massive action concept, now let's talk about the different areas of our life. And last year, we started the concept, I learned this from a coach named Garrett White, which is called the Core Four. And this concept really brought a lot of clarity for me. As I shared with you guys last year, I have I have had and continue to have, but now I'm aware of it, this very compulsive personality where, if I'm like, I did a bikini competition in 3 months. All I did was breathe, everything was all around this competition. And then as soon as the competition was over, I was like, poof, that was that. And then I gained all this weight, right? And so I went from one extreme to the next. When I built my business, I'm like, okay, here I go. And I go hard for, 3, 6 months. Then I'm like, woof, that was that. And then I kick back. And I know I'm not the only one who does this, okay? So I'm so not concerned about people's judgment around this for me because I finally embrace the fact that, hey, you know what? This is something that works for me sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't work for me. So I just now need to be aware, okay, there I go again, and just put things in place that will support me. So if I go hard for 6 months and then I want to take a little break, okay, that I have things in place so that as soon as that break of, a weekend break or whatever is done, I've got things in place to get me back on track. So we started talking about last week to start looking at the 4 areas of our lives that are really important to 99% of us, right? And the first thing was, what do you want, number 1, for your body? And to start creating this core 4 concept, if you guys go to latinleadership.com, it will direct you to my website. Under audios, look for the core 4 call. You've got to go back and listen to that if you haven't, because it really explains this concept, which I don't have time to do that right now. But we started last week to look at what do you want to create with your body, and to really create a vision that is going to inspire you, that's going to motivate you, that's really going to keep you on track. For, to think I'm going to lose 20 pounds might not be exciting, but to think, I'm going to look really sexy naked, or, I'm going to look really sexy in my bikini, or I'm going to be fit and energetic to play with my children. I'm going to have the energy and the vitality and the stamina to live my life powerfully. So whatever it is for you, to really get clear on that. Number 2, what vision do you want to create for your spirituality? And I'm not talking about religion, although that might be something that's important for you. I know for me, I pray every night before I go to bed. Half of the time I fall asleep before I finish my prayers, but, I do my best. And every morning, like today, I meditated for 30 minutes, and I just got present to being grateful for all the great things in my life. And it's amazing what that does for you. At least for me, I feel so grounded. So you want to start looking at what are you going to create for 2015. And you don't have to wait until January 1st. You can start this now. What do you want to create with your spirituality to be more connected to your creator? It's so important because, listen, if you really think that you're like doing this on your own, well, I don't know. You might want to consider that, pondering that question. But anyhow, so number 1, your body. Number 2, your spirituality. Number 3, what do you want to create in your relationship? And now I really want to encourage all of us, including myself, to really go to work on this part. I think, so many of my girlfriends and I, we've had this conversation how so many of us on the phone are like really like overachievers, right? We can create anything. We relate to ourselves like, yeah, we can create anything. But when it comes to the area of relationships, we're like a mess, right? Like when it comes to like finding a significant other and how to communicate and how to have intimacy, that's not that practical as creating a goal. It's like you create a goal, you execute, you're done. But when you're creating something with another human being, especially if you really love them, now there's all this complexity that goes along with it. But the thing is, it's really simple, but as Jim Rohn says, what's simple to do, it's simple not to do, right? It's easy to do, it's easy not to do. But here's an area of your life that if you invest a lot of your time in, I promise you your experiences will be so much more richer. And that is, what are you going to create for 2015 in the areas of your relationship? And you might want to start thinking about, what do I want to create with my partner? What do I want to create with my children? What do I want to create with my family, my brothers, my sisters? Like really create a vision. And if this is too much for you to handle like all at once, take one relationship at a time. And I'm going to give you some tips, and that is, don't think so much of what you're going to do. Like, okay, I'm going to do a date. I'm going to, do a weekend or whatever, right? But rather than, that you might want to do that as well, but really look at who are you going to be when it comes to the area of relationships. So who are you going to be for your children? You might want to create, I'm going to be present. I mean, that right there is a breakthrough for so many of us, right? Because we're like on the go all the time. So you might want to create that. Like, I'm going to be present. So what are you going to create for your relationships? And number 4, what are you going to create for your business? And I think I'm not going to spend too much time with that. Go back to last week's call and really get clear on this, because the last thing that we talked about last week was why this is important is because we got to start looking at how do you identify yourself. Okay, because one of the things that we know about human beings is that we will do everything and anything to be consistent to how we identify ourselves, how we relate to ourselves. For example, if you relate to yourself as I am shy, well, you will do things that shy people do. And then someone will come to you and say, let's, jump off the plane, let's go skydiving. And you're like, no, I don't do that. I'm not adventurous. Well, that's who, right? So last week, I really invited all of us to start looking at how do we identify ourselves? How do we speak to ourselves? How do we identify ourselves? Do we identify ourselves as somebody who's disciplined? For example, one of the things I know about me is that I am always on time. So I will do everything and anything to be on time. Now, if you relate to yourself like, well, I'm always late, well, guess what? The actions will be consistent to you identifying yourself with I'm always late. So why this is important is because as you're starting to create 2015, you might want to consider that you will be needing some adjustments and some expansions of your identity. Because if you continue to, I can only assume that our results from last year were consistent with how you identified yourself last year. So if you identified yourself in 2014 as, this is my year, I'm going to go get it, you probably had an amazing year. And I can do anything, I am disciplined, I follow through, I care for my team, I care for myself, and you identified yourself with all these empowerment, words, you probably had an amazing year. But if you identified yourself, well, I just can't get things done. Well, there's always tomorrow. If you identified your life that way, your actions were consistent with that. So if we want to have a different year, we really have to be mindful of what it's going to take to have those new visions be created. And guess what? Who gets to create them is you. So my question to you is, did you do last week's homework? Have you put thought into your body, your relationships, your spirituality, and your business? And were you present to how were you relating to yourself? How were you talking to yourself? Who do you say that you are for yourself, for your people around you, and for the world? And if you weren't, I really challenge you to do that today and this week, okay? So I took some time with that because I know we've got a lot of new people on the call today, and it's really important that we really get present to the fact that, you take you with you everywhere you go. And, this last weekend, my parents had a retreat at their house, and one of my friends went to go do some exercises with them. And, people were blown away. They were like, I just finally got, I am my business. I am, who I am in my relationships affects my business. And, I'm sitting here telling my team, I've been telling you this for the last 2 years, right? But here's the thing. We sometimes need to hear things over and over and over and over again. And sometimes, you're just not ready to hear it. And then somebody else says it, the same thing, different voice, maybe in a different way, but it's the same concept. And you're like, oh, that was brilliant. Well, that's because it was already in your mind. And it was growing like a seed. You planted the seed and it took some time to grow, especially if it's a new concept that you haven't lived into. So anyhow, let's go ahead and talk about the 10 tips that are going to that are really going to help you achieve your goals this year, 2015. And a lot of it we've already covered, but I'm going to go ahead and go through these just for you to have a little checklist, if you will, on what it's going to take to really fulfill on your goals and your visions this next coming year. So number 1, okay, here we go. So the 10, maybe it's like a show, right? The top 10 list. Anyway, so number 1 is make a commitment. Now, this is not by any means oh, my God, yeah, I got this, Carla. But here's the thing. Remember, I want you to hear this from, newly. Make a commitment to yourself, number 2, with your family, and, number 3, with your team, with your business partners. And here's what I wanted for you to consider. that so many times we know what we're out to create. Like, let's say if you have a family, if you have children, you're married and stuff like that, right? And your goal for 2015 is to like really build this amazing business. And you have it all in your head because you're going to create all this stuff for your family. And in your mind, you've got this commitment. But you never sat down and shared it with the people that you love. And you never sat down and shared it with the people that it's going to make a difference with. So here you are working your booty off, and maybe your children or your spouse is like resentful. And you're thinking like, I'm doing this for them. Well, consider that they don't know that. You know, one time there was this guy that was telling me like, oh my God, when I get to this level, I'm going to da-da-da-da and buy this car and buy these golf clubs and travel. And I looked at the wife, the look on the wife's face was like, okay. So I turned to this individual and I said, what about your family? And he was like, oh, well, Carla, of course, if I make all that money, of course they're going to be benefited. Of course I'm going to buy her car, whatever she wants. But here's the thing, we can't assume that people around us know this. So I really encourage you to take the time to establish that communication with the people that you love and establish the commitments that you're going to have for 2015. Number 2, keep track of your progress. And this is part of, the second pillar, which is strategy, is keep track of your progress. Make sure you've got something that you're like saying, okay, am I on track? Am I behind? Are we doing good? Keep your numbers. Okay. Number 3, break it down. Now, here's the thing. You want to definitely have these ambitious goals for 2015, but I want to encourage you to now break them down for the next 90 days, the next month, a weekly, and I would even go down to the daily plan. And here's the thing. I'm going to talk about this a little bit about being flexible, but I'm going to give you an idea. If you come to my house right now in my office, right in front of me, it says, who I am is productive and intentional. And the night before, I literally write down, wake up at 6 a.m. I had a webinar today from 7 to 9, and then I had a call, my English call from at 9 a.m., text everybody by 8:45, get ready, drop off my car. Everything's on here. And if I do this the night before, it's like magic. My brain has it works. Sometimes without me thinking about it, things will just happen because it's already programmed in my brain. So, break it down to the 30 days, weekly, and the night before, make sure you plan out your day. And I'm going to give you a little bonus here. When you plan out what you're going to do, make sure your activities, you ask this question. What are the 2 or 3 things that I must do to get me closer to my goal? What are the 2 or 3 things that I must do to get me closer to my goal? Because so many of these things, dropping off my car today at the mechanic, has nothing to do with my goals, but I got to get that done. But what are the 2 or 3 things, Carla, that I have to do? And I asked myself this yesterday, and they were like the last things on my list. I'm like, oh, yeah, right? So I just want to make sure that you guys get present to not just be busy, but to be productive. Number 4, get help. You might need some external support to accomplish your goals. There might be things that you don't know that you need to know to be able to accomplish your goals. Maybe you need to get better about, knowing more about your business. Maybe there's an area in your business that you're unclear. Listen, this is my hardest part for me, is to ask for help. I'm like, oh, I'll figure it out. But how much time do we waste? There's already somebody out there who's done what you want to do. Ask for help. Ask for support. Ask for guidance. And I'll speak for myself. I get so much joy in contributing to somebody else. So consider that there's so many people out there that want to pay it forward. All you've got to do is ask. Number 5, be willing to revisit and revise. This is why number 2 is so important to keep track of your progress, because you've got to be willing to, regularly check in. Are things going good? And you might want to consider that as you're looking at things, you might want to, need to adjust certain things in order to accomplish your goals. And that's okay. You might be like, okay, well, I thought this was going to work. Now, don't change your plan completely, but maybe there's some adjustments, and that's why having a mentor is going to be so crucial. Number 6, keep the eye on the prize. We talked about this 2 weeks ago, how important it is to keep your vision in front of you. Take a picture of something, put it on your phone, take a picture, put it on your board, make a dream board, put it on your refrigerator. Whatever it takes, revisit it as much as you possibly can, because that's really going to keep you present, especially when things are not going your way. You're like, okay, I always say to myself, this is just temporary, right? And I keep going. Number 7, be consistent. And this is, Mark used to always tell us, Mark Hughes, the founder of Herbalife, used to always tell us, be consistent, and be consistent about being consistent, right? And that is, you have a consistency, and when you start doing like a routine, and that's why I had you last week start thinking about what are going to be your daily rituals, right? When you start thinking about those rituals and you start thinking about what routine you're going to put into place, you have a better winning chance, because your brain likes consistency. When you're like doing one thing one day, another thing another day, you kind of get confused. Now, granted, as an entrepreneur, things are always changing. I get it. But just consider that the more routine and the more consistent you are, the more you will make progress. If you've got a plan for your body, like I'm going to do this in the morning, I'm going to work out, I'm going to do this. If you got a plan and you just stick to that plan, it becomes automatic. And the next thing you know it, who you are is that, right? And then, of course, remember, we always will act upon how we identify ourselves to be. Number 8, let your goals grow up. Okay? So here's what I mean by that. Life changes, and so will your goals. And one of the things that I can tell you from one of my biggest mistakes that I've made in my life has been that before I accomplished a goal, I didn't set a new one. So if I could give you a big piece of advice is, as you're getting closer to your 90-day plan and you're coming to, at the end of your 30 days, make sure that, yes, you close your month strong, but you're already thinking about, what am I going to do next month? The reason being is because, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, what makes somebody happy and true happiness is progress. So as long as you're feeling like you're making progress, you won't get bored. If you're starting to get bored, it's because you don't have anything that challenges you. And it might be that 1 month you do X amount of business, and then next month you're like, okay, I'm going to go for this much. And here you are excited because you've got a new goal. So you've got to allow your goals to grow up with you. Number 9. Okay, this is such, I know you're probably thinking, duh, but sometimes we forget that we have to focus on positive thinking. I know it sounds kind of cliche, okay, but it can really empower you to reach your success. Now I'm going to give you a little tip that I do, because sometimes I wake up not wanting to work out. So when I wake up and I'm getting ready, what I do is I have these YouTube videos that I love that have they're like 4 to 6 minutes, and they've got this amazing voice and this amazing music, and it just puts me in state. Like, yes, I'm going to go get it, And one of the videos says, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to sleep, right? And I get all pumped up, like just listening to these inspirational words, like, okay, come on, Carla, let's go do this, right? I listen to Rocky IV, whatever you need to do to stay positive and to keep yourself in state. And lastly, number 10, put a big star next to this one, you've got to celebrate. Okay, so number 10, celebrate. Here's the thing. You can't expect yourself to work steadily towards a goal without having some type of reward along with it. And I'm telling you, the moments that I was the most successful in my life were the times that I had this in place. I didn't even do this consciously, but every first weekend of the month, we would go on a little trip to San Francisco with my friends, and so I would work hard all week, all month. And then the last week of the month, I poured it on. And then that weekend, Saturday afternoon, we would drive down to San Francisco. We would spend the weekend in San Francisco. We had a great time to celebrate. So you want to make sure you put something in place, whatever that is for you, whether it's you celebrate with your family in the weekend, once a week, once a month, whatever you need to do, but make sure you do something that makes you feel good, because you're like, all right, this is good. And I'll give you a last tip, and that is, one of the reasons why I make a long list of the things that I need to do, like wake up, webinar, make my bed, take my car, like little accomplishments, it's because I get to celebrate every time I accomplish something by crossing it off. And your brain does not know the difference if it's something big or if it's something like making my bed every morning. Okay? The moment I cross it off, I celebrate. And it's like little moments of celebration that will fulfill you to feel like you're progressing in life. And therefore, that gives you more momentum to accomplish more of your goals. All right, well, it's exactly 9:30, so what I'm going to do, don't hang up. I'm going to end the recording, but I'm going to open up the lines to see if anybody has any questions or comments. So hang on a second.